Today, I have brought to you the 7 tips that are sure short way to building your fluency in English language. Learning a new language is always challenging, but trust me, if you follow these 7 tips every day, you are going to build your fluency in English language. Welcome to Fluency Girls. I am Mandeep, and today I have brought to you the 7 tips that have worked over time for all of my students and have helped them achieve their goals in the fluency. If you follow these religiously, then I'm sure nobody can stop you in achieving your goals. So let's begin. Tip number 1, start thinking in English. Now, I'm sure you have heard this all over so many times before that you have to learn to start thinking in English in order to be able to speak fluently. But trust me, it's 100% true, and it really is very important that the thought process begins here. But the big question is how to achieve that thought process in English. Well, there are some ways, some tricks that can help you in start thinking in English. Why don't we just begin with our daily routine? So there are so many chores, so many activities that you perform every day. Start describing, narrating those activities. Imagine that somebody is making your vlog, somebody is recording you. Start describing what you are doing, what you require, how you're doing it. Describe those activities, and it's not that you just think in your head, but it's important that you say them aloud and without putting much thought into it. The beauty of this process is that you don't put much thought into what you are doing because it is a part of your daily routine and your tasks, and you just happen to describe what you are doing, and in the process, without thinking much about the activity, you are focusing on describing it. It might happen that in the beginning you might fumble, you might stop, you might have to put a lot of thought into finding the right words, right phrases to describe those activities. But eventually, over a period of time, you develop this habit of describing, saying things aloud, that you start finding the words easily, quickly, and the thought process starts developing here. So it's very important that you develop that thought process of thinking in English first, because that is the foremost hurdle in your fluency. Because when you don't think in English, when you're just translating from your native language, it hampers your fluency. The second thing that you can do for training your mind to think in English is talk to yourself. Yes, if you do not have any language partner, and even if you have one, trust me, this process is very simple, and talking to oneself, one is the least hesitant as there is no judgment at all. So how to talk to yourself? Stand in front of mirror every day 5 to 10 minutes. Just tell yourself how you would want your day to be. What are your expectations from the day? Or what is the important task that you are going to perform the day? When you get back from work, how your day went, and what went wrong, what went right, what was the most exciting part, what was the most challenging thing, and what are your future expectations. Talk anything, talk about your weekend plans, but talk to yourself. When you talk to yourself, you are the least hesitant, you are the least judgmental of yourself. So it works in breaking that first hesitation of speaking. So do this every day to build that fluency to slowly reach to your goal. Tip number 2 is to increase your exposure to the language. Now, when I say increase your exposure to the language, I mean to say that you have to surround yourself with the language, fall in love with the language, fall in love with the tone, the intonation, the sound of the words. So if your environment doesn't include a lot of English and you do not speak much of English at work or with people around, then you have to take the responsibility of creating that environment for yourself. Now, what you can do here is while commuting to your work, listen to the podcasts. And it's important that you do not just listen to any monologues, but rather you listen to the conversational ones. Now, the beauty of conversations is that the conversations bring out a lot of emotions, collocations that are not used in the written language, and you cannot grab those from the reading of the language. So when you listen to the conversations, you not just listen to the words, the sentences, collocations, but you also learn about how to emote your feelings. What are the stress syllables? What are the intonations, the tones that you need to have while emoting those feelings, those emotions? So it's very important that you listen to the conversational ones here. I always stress that there are two kinds of exposure to the language. One is active exposure and one is passive exposure. The active exposure involves when you are conversing with people in the language, when you are actively involved in it, you are speaking in English, you are listening to people, understanding their talks, you are reading, paying attention to the sentence structures, to the words, learning new vocabulary. But the passive exposure, the language stays in the background. You do not focus much on the language structure, on the vocabulary, on the sentence patterns. Say you're watching a movie, your focus remains on the storyline, on the characters, on the landscapes. So you are paying attention to the movie and the characters, but the language remains in the backdrop where you are passively catching that language. So it's important that you provide yourself with that exposure to the language, not only actively but also passively. While you're working in the kitchen, listen to the songs, enjoy the music, English songs. So listen to the news channels, English news channels. You are focusing on the news, but you are absorbing the language passively. So it should become an essential part of your everyday routine. Tip number three is learn through association, not translation. Now, I have seen so many ESL learners try to learn English language, the new words, new vocabulary through the translation method. I'm sorry to break this to you, but if you are able to understand English even a bit, if you are at that level, then this translation method is just not going to work for you. It works only for the at the lowest level where you have just begun learning the language, and it is a failed method of learning any language if you are still trying to learn English by translating sentences and the words from your native language to the English language. Then it is definitely going to provide you with new vocabulary, new words, but I'm sorry to say it is never going to give you any fluency. Because for being fluent, it is important that you start thinking in English, and translation method is one method that hampers that thinking process, because you are first thinking in your native language, then translating in English language, and it takes so much time and effort that you fumble while speaking and you become hesitant while speaking. Plus, it is just impractical because the sentence structures of one language are not exactly the same as the other language, and so it is not possible to translate some words, some sentences word to word. So what I would suggest rather here is whenever you learn new vocabulary, new sentences, new words, phrases, what you need to do is associate those new words, phrases that you have learned with an image in your mind. Let's say you learned a new word, arrogant. So associate that word with an image of an angry person who is just yelling at other people. So try to remember the context. The context are the situations. The situations, when you associate the words and phrases to the situations and to the images, it makes it very easy for you to use them whenever you get into the same situation or context. So it accelerates that thinking process that further helps in building your fluency. So tip number four is whenever you learn a new word, learn it by the method of DASRRW. Now, what is this DASRRW? It is something that I have coined in order for my students to learn the new words quickly. So, DAS method is definition, antonym, and synonym. So, whenever you learn a new word, make sure that you learn its definition. By learning, I don't mean mug up its definition. By learning, I mean that you understand the exact meaning of the word the situations that they are going to be used in. And when you learn a new word, also ensure that you learn one opposite word to it, one antonym, and as well as one synonym, a word that is very similar in meaning. Now, this antonym and synonym can be very, very, very basic. Like uh, the antonym of happy is sad. But let's say you are learning a new word, elated. Don't make the antonym tougher for you, but rather keep it simple, easy. So, antonym of elated that you should be learning is sad. So, that way, your usage of the word becomes easier for you, and also you are building vocabulary on a three level. So, every word that you learn, you are learning plus two words as antonyms and synonyms. And the second part here is RRW. By RRW method, I mean repetition reinforcement of the word. Now, repetition, repeat that word. Repeat the word in your conversation at least 4 or 5 times. Reinforce it in the various contexts. So, when you use the word in various context situations consciously, the same day that you learn at least 4 or 5 times, it helps you in retaining not only the word, its usage, but also the context of it. Moving on, tip number 5. So, tip number 5 is record yourself and listen to it. So, be your own teacher. It may sound a little absurd to you to record yourself and listen to it. You might ask, how is it going to help me? But trust me, many times it happens that we have the right pronunciations and the sentences in our head, but when we say them aloud, they just don't come right. And this is where this method helps you. Now, what to record? So, I would suggest record where you don't have to put a lot of thought into. Take excerpts from your favorite magazines, be it sports magazine, political one, or a fashion magazine. Take an excerpt from the magazine or newspaper and record yourself reading that article, that excerpt loud, and listen to it. When you listen to it, trust me, you'll be able to catch a lot of mispronunciations yourself because you have learned it listening to others. But when you say it, many a times it just doesn't come right. Note down those mispronunciations, try to speak them correctly, and also work on the intonation and stress syllables where you feel you could have done better. Try to practice those. Eventually, over a period of time, you will definitely learn to pronounce a lot of words better. So you become your own teacher in teaching yourself how to speak better. Tip number 6 is to drop the hesitation. Yes, as a second language learners of the language, we feel quite hesitant in speaking with people who are very fluent in the language because we feel that they might judge us, they might laugh at us, they'll correct us. But trust me, there is no shortcut to this process. In order to learn the language, you have to speak it. You have to converse in the language to build your fluency. Remember the children, how they learn the language, they just speak it. They speak it wrong so many times, and as adults we correct them so many times, and what they do is just repeat the corrections after us. So that is what you have to do without any hesitation. You have to speak in English and learn as you speak. So don't be afraid, embrace the language and learn as you speak. Tip number 7 is to be consistent. Yes, nothing is going to work for you if you are not consistent in your learning. The key to any language learning is consistency, is to practice it consistently. All of the above, it should become a habitual routine for you, a part of your life, and soon you will be there where you want to be, and nobody can stop you from achieving your goals. So that was all. I hope that these tips help you. Comment below, tell me what worked for you and what you found the most challenging part. And apart from this, if you're following any other method and it's working out perfectly for you, then please share it in the comments below. You never know, sharing your own methods, your own ways might help some other language learner in achieving their goals and on their journey to the language learning. And if you have liked this video, then please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.